the Republican right now, I am really hoping that somehow Newt doesn't become the candidate. When you talk about the two ways to, attack, they all fit together. I mean, his behavioral patterns over the course of a very long period of time are consistently inconsistent. And this thing about lobbyist versus historian, it's just ridiculous. So, I mean, it's not just a big problem for him, it should be a knockout punch. And if it's not, and somehow he becomes the candidate, if I'm in the Republican Party, I'd be very nervous about that.
You know, Guy, a lot of Republicans are saying they can't wait to see Newt Gingrich debate the president. I mean, a lot of people putting a lot of stock in Newt's debating skills,
right.
But it's not simply a debate that makes you a leader.
Well, there's a couple points to make here. And first of all, I think that Brett Stevens has a great column in today's Wall Street Journal talking about the field in general for Republicans. And I think he captures my sentiments almost perfectly. It's a deeply flawed field. The question is, are any of them, I guess, good enough to be a very deeply flawed president? But getting back to your question, Uma, I think this is a really important point to make. I wrote a whole column about it yesterday, which is still up today at townhall.com. Newt Gingrich is a very effective debater, especially when he has that crowd behind him, which he didn't have last night because they had a moratorium on cheering, which, by the way, would be the case in a general election setting. But he really feeds off that energy. He's very good at zinging the president. He's very good at pushing back robustly at the debate moderators. But I think that there is a mistake that some voters might be making, not all voters, but some of the Newt supporters, I think, see one or two debates every week on the Republican side and assume that will continue and spill over into the general election cycle.
I agree with you about that.
That's not going to happen. It's going to be three. There's going to be three max. There's going to be 3 debates, 90 minutes each, in October, and that's it. And running for president, winning a general election, is a lot more than winning a couple debates.
No, I agree with you on that point wholeheartedly, because I do feel that there are people who are just anxious to see this matchup between the two, which obviously would be interesting to see the two go at it, because he is an excellent debater. But setting that aside, it does not address the larger questions about leadership and about whether or not he connects with voters. It doesn't come
close to it. He's a great debater. I really enjoy watching him. And anybody who teaches that, and universities will use him as an iconic example of how to debate. But his track record is so flawed. I think it's an understatement. I mean, I think it's almost incredible to me that he is still being taken seriously.
Well, I think the track record that is so fatally flawed is this president's, and I think that's why anyone who's in the center or the right, people who are out of work in this country, need to come together and figure out a way to beat this president in November, because we can talk about all the past baggage that we want. We need to look at the future, and we've seen these last 3 years, almost by the president's own admission, his policies aren't working, and they're costing us a ton and plunging us deeper into debt.
There seems to be this debate also within the party itself, the GOP. I mean, when we talk about flawed candidates going up against a flawed president, last night, for example, Governor Christie called Newt Gingrich an embarrassment to the Republicans, where then Sarah Palin basically was taking on Christie for making those comments to begin with. And it seems like people are fighting against each other for a stake in this presidential contest, trying to say, you know what, we've got good people here, let's not beat each other up. But then again, the voters are saying we want to see these kind of matchups to see who really has what it takes to be the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, and look, this cuts all different ways. If Mitt Romney doesn't have his act together enough to defeat someone who is really flawed like Newt Gingrich, is he going to run out there and beat President Obama? Really? I mean, these are questions that I think voters do have to decide. I really am turned off by this discussion that you're starting to hear in the back circles of Republican establishment elites saying, oh, maybe we can have a brokered convention. We have elections for a reason. Voters have options for a reason. If people chose not to run, that's their business. We have choices. They're not perfect by any stretch, but let's let the voters decide. And I think that's the bottom line here.
Do you think, Eric, at this point can anybody be called the front runner? I mean, put up the polls that we have right now.
I have said this, you know it.
The latest GOP nominee preference, we've got the polls up there with Gingrich at 41, Romney at 32, Santorum and Paul come after that.
Mitt Romney is the front runner. I don't care what any of those numbers say. I don't care what's going on today. I've been saying this for 6 months emphatically.
Poll as of January 22nd.
They're good numbers for
Among
the day.
Florida voters, this is who's leading there right now.
I just don't think Gingrich has a shot. shot. And if he does have a shot, I think it's bad for the party.
But right now, the latest poll that Rasmussen has done has shown that the strongest opponent at this moment against President Obama, Newt Gingrich, does come out on top over Romney with 42%. Guy, what do you make of that?
Well, those numbers have bounced around quite a lot. The candidate who seems to have polled best consistently against President Obama in a wide array of polls has been Mitt Romney. But that, again, only goes so far. His favorability ratings have dropped a little bit, I think, and once the Democrat machine gets going on any of these guys, it's going to be a bloodbath. President Obama has to run a brutally vicious, negative campaign. He can't defend his own record, so he's going to try to destroy his opponent. They've pretty much said that already. They've told the press, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be really ugly to watch. So I think the task for Republican voters is to figure out which alternative on the Republican side is the most credible and makes it hardest for the Democrats to make them the issue rather than this failed president who deserves to be the issue, because it should be a referendum on his leadership. And one more point, by the way, Uma, going back to your question about all this infighting, this is par for the course. Democrats, Republicans, whenever there's a contested primary, there are endorsements, people separate off into camps, and they fire pot shots at each other.
But
we saw it with Hillary and Obama.
I hear you saying that, but I don't recall it being this vicious this early against candidates going after each other in this way, very publicly, and people who are not even running, like a Governor Christie who's going and lashing out against, I know he's supporting Romney, but the fact that he's publicly going on record saying he's an embarrassment to the party, that kind of thing.
Well, one example that comes to mind is former Fox News contributor, may she rest in peace, Geraldine Ferraro, who was a Hillary backer, came out and said that if Barack Obama were white and had this resume, he'd be laughed off the stage, and then she was called a racist by the Obama people. I mean, there were surrogates going after each other. It got very ugly.
Point well taken.
Yeah, but I think one difference, which is why maybe we talk about it so much, is how many debates there's been. How many different polls we keep seeing? How many, flavors of the week? Every week I come back, it's like, last week, Newt was, we weren't taking him that seriously. Now, he's being taken every week that I come back, it seems, because I do it once a week. Is it Perry? Is it Santorum? Is it, who is it?
All right. I got to jump in here, guys. Guy, thank you so much for joining us with your insights. Always a pleasure having you on board. I know you're going to be keeping close watch on the numbers and as the events unfold as we lead up to the big Florida primary, which is a week from today. Great to see you. Thank you. Have fun in Florida.
Great seeing you, too.
Yeah,
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, have fun.
I'll try.